Our United States Grand Prix F1 driver ratings. Today, we are getting into the nitty-gritty of each driver and how they performed over 2 races over a sprint weekend with 5,000 competitive sessions. It's going to be a fun one, isn't it, Tommy?
There is so much to unpack in driver ratings, and then when it's a sprint, it's like another 20 drivers again, and try and scramble my brain and remember everything that went on.
But let's begin with the man of the moment. Logan Sargent started the sprint in 20th, finished 19th. Started the race in 16th, finished 10th. Logie Bear, it's interesting, isn't it? Because the sprint was one of the worst races I think we've seen from him. Alex Albon finished closer to Verstappen than Sargent did to Albon. And you're thinking, it's time to tear up that contract, James Fowles. Let's make a decision here. Hopefully he didn't for Logan's sake, because in the race, it was actually relatively good. I've gone for a 7 out of 10 for Logan Sargent. We're not going to get too crazy here, but what I will appreciate was for Logan to bounce back after Qatar, where he had to make probably one of the most difficult decisions of his entire life of retiring from that race due to illness. And to then come and score a point. I know, disqualifications, few retirements, whatever, but he still scored a point. That is what goes down in the history books. And Logan is now a points scorer.
He sure is. I've gone for an 8 out of 10 for Logan Sargent. It's a high 7 that I've pushed to an 8 because well done, Logie, getting some points. And I think as well, not just the Qatar thing, but to pick himself up after that awful sprint where, you know, me and you, and I think Fairley were being like, right, that's it. Surely he's done now. And maybe this drive has saved him again, because this is exactly what we've been saying. You know, he just needs to be there or thereabouts with Albon, not making mistakes. And he didn't. So well done, Logan.
Alex Albon now, his teammate, started the sprint in 8th, finished 9th. Started the race in 15th, finished 9th.
I've gone for exactly the same grade, an 8 out of 10, mainly because Albon did about the same as Logan, bit better, had the track limit penalty, of course, had a great sprint as well. He was only 0.2 off a point in that as well, which would have been a great result for Williams to bag points in both. Alex Albon nearly did that. And yeah, for him to get 2 9th places when the Williams is certainly not a car on paper that you'd say is like the 5th best car. So good job from Alex.
I've gone for an 8 out of 10 for Alex Albon. I think that, you know, what differentiates the two teammates is the sprint. Logan had an absolutely woeful time in the sprint, and I can't give them the same grade because of it. But Alex gets an 8 out of 10 because, of course, very, very good in both races. Obviously pushing quite hard. Loves a little track limits penalty, does Alex, you know, pushing the limits and all that good stuff. He did it in Qatar as well, didn't he? But still scores a couple of points, and Williams, again, like, yeah, pretty solid. Daniel Ricciardo now started the sprint in 10th, finished 12th, started the race in 14th, finished 15th. I have gone for a 6 out of 10 for Daniel Ricciardo. He had a reasonably solid sprint. And then the race, I feel like he's been fully screwed over. 1, by the strategy, and 2, what wasn't really made clear during the race is that he actually picked up a lot of damage to his floor and front brake duct, which was found when he pitted, which of course would have affected his pace quite substantially. All things being considered, he's coming back for the first time after breaking his hand, kept it on the black stuff, got stuck in the sprint. I'm going to give him a 6.
I've also gone for a 6 out of 10. I don't think it's anywhere near as bad as some people think, that drive, and especially with damage. It looks a lot worse on paper than it actually is. If he carries on doing these drives, it's less than ideal, and I think that there'll be questions asked. But yeah, it's a decent result, and of course, you know, having the damage as well. We know what happens with these cars when you pick up floor damage, so it does make a big difference. So you've got to factor that into it as well.
Absolutely. Yuki Tsunoda now started the sprint in 19th, finished 14th, started the race in 11th, finished 8th.
Gone for an 8 out of 10 for Yuki Tsunoda. Of course, the fact that he's managed to get a big chunk of points at AlphaTauri when they desperately need it, and they're caught up Haas quite a lot after this, Bagged the extra point, of course, as well, which was great. The only thing that let him down really this weekend was his sprint. He made the most of the race, and finally he bagged those points, because there was one moment where I was like, oh my God, he's finishing 11th again. Please, no.
I've gone for an 8 out of 10 as well for Yuki Tsunoda. It's nice to see that AlphaTauri didn't completely and utterly screw him over with a 0-stop race or a 5-stop race or something to really make it difficult for him. But Yuki once again showing that he has got that raw speed and capitalised on those 2 disqualifications. And 5 points is massive for AlphaTauri. So we'll see if we get another crazy race between now and the end of the season, which could change the bottom of that constructors table. Nico Hulkenberg now started the sprint in 16th, finished 15th. Started the race in the pit lane, finished 11th. I've gone for a 6 out of 10 for Nico Hulkenberg. I was not expecting, with all of this hype around this new massive Haas upgrade, to be saying, God, well, weren't they anonymous this weekend? But they were. As anonymous as they usually are in a lot of times. Obviously, Nico sometimes pulls out the bag in qualifying, but didn't really see that this weekend from either of the Haas drivers, apart from at the start of Q1, and we're like, ooh, is this the moment? Günther Steiner, champion of the world. But that didn't happen.
Sure hasn't gone for a 6 out of 10 as well. We say it every single weekend, but Haas are just so rubbish. They're just so anonymous, and Hulkenberg may well have just had the greatest race of his life, but we'll never know because they're just absolutely nowhere.
Kevin Magnussen now started the sprint in 17th, finished 18th, started it from the pit lane for the main race and finished 14th.
Gone for a 4 out of 10 for Kevin Magnussen. Another classic K-Mag of just being a bit washed. I think we saw Kevin Magnussen 2023 spec in a nutshell, which was loads of battles, but not very quick and a pretty rubbish result. Him and Yuki Tsunoda had the most unbelievable battle where they went side by side through that triple right-hander after doing the switchback in that amazing slow corner that people do, and then battling side by side even into the final 2 corners as well. It was unbelievable, but it was all for nothing really, because Magnussen just didn't really have much pace, which has kind of been the case a lot this year. They're just so bad at the moment.
They certainly are. I've gone for a 4 out of 10 as well for Kevin Magnussen. He was fighting like his life depended on it with everyone that would fight him. I think Haas might want to have ripped up this new contract and gone for someone else because he's not delivering on the promise in which I'm sure he gave, which was experience and pushing the team forward. And neither him or Hulkenberg have been pushing the team forward. If anything, they've gone backwards. Lance Stroll now started the sprint in 14th, did not finish, and started the main race from the pit lane and finished 7th. I've gone for an 8 out of 10 for Lance Stroll. I feel like he had one of the quietest pit lane to 7th places you've ever seen. Incredibly impressive. He was running the new spec car. Was he the old or the new spec? Basically Fernando.
Alonso went back to the old spec.
So Fernando was on the old spec, Lance was on the new spec, and Lance was only a few seconds behind Fernando when he retired. I think 3-4 seconds maybe when Fernando had his problems. So Lance was on the pace with Fernando, and I'm sure when Aston Martin go back to the drawing board and look at the analysis, they go, so Lance was within 4 seconds of Fernando with the new spec car. I think that one works slightly better. But either or, Lance did a very good job. And yeah, some big points, but could not stop McLaren from going past them.
I've gone for a 8 out of 10. It's so borderline 7 and 8. I think it is a good drive. He's had a bit of a mare elsewhere. His qualifying wasn't great at all either. Obviously started from the pits and then did the Lance Stroll drive. Was going to finish behind Alonso, who had an older spec car, but then this is more what we're kind of expecting from Lance. It's not him finishing 20 places behind Fernando, although that's going to be a lot trickier when Aston Martin are so bad that now Fernando is only able to qualify about 13th and 14th as well.
Fernando Alonso started the sprint in 12th, finished 13th, started the race from the pit lane and didn't finish.
Gone for an 8 out of 10 for Fernando. I think it is a good drive. He was potentially going to beat Gasly, who had an absolutely sensational result. And when you think that Fernando started in the pit lane driving an old spec car, it would have been a great result. If Alonso finishes that race in P6, we'd be sat here going, oh my God, he is trying to cling on to that position in the championship when he really shouldn't be there and just bagging.
I know you would. I know you'd be claiming GOAT status.
Absolutely. But alas, floor damage, pain. And I can't shy away from that. His sprint wasn't great either. He was kind of getting into some clumsy battles in the midfield and was maybe overdriving the car a bit.
I've also gone for an 8 out of 10 for Fernando. It was an incredibly impressive race from both of the Aston Martins, considering they got knocked out in Q1, both of them, but their race pace was very strong. The strategy was well executed, and yeah, Fernando, if he'd have beaten Gasly, that would have been sensational. Valtteri Bottas started the sprint in 18th, finished 16th, started the race in 13th, finished 12th. Well, Valtteri. You've had one of those races again, haven't you, Valtteri? Where nothing happens. 5 out of 10 for Valtteri Bottas. Alfa Romeo back to being incredibly washed. As I said, they pitted really early. Bottas on lap 10, ZHOU on lap 9 from fresh mediums, and then they kind of went for this two sort of, well, one kind of small hard stint and then a very long hard stint at the end. And I don't think the strategy was probably the best in terms of what we saw from the other runners, but yeah, Alfa very washed. Didn't see much of them. 5 out of 10.
Yeah, I've gone for a 5 out of 10 for Bottas as well. After the heroics of Qatar and Alfa Romeo bagging all those points, they were back to anonymous Alfa Romeo, forgetting they even exist and just kind of being in the midfield, and you just don't see them the whole race and they don't really do anything.
ZHOU GUANYU started the sprint in 15th, finished 17th, started the main race in 12th, finished 13th.
Now this may surprise you, but I've gone for a 5 out of 10 for ZHOU GUANYU for, like Bottas, just existing and driving and not crashing and finishing in a mediocre position where that Alfa Romeo is kind of there and not doing anything special. So 5 out of 10.
5 out of 10 for me as well. Like, just nothing to say. They did nothing. I don't think I saw anything of them. It's straight down the middle for both of the Alfa Romeo drivers. Oscar Piastri started the sprint in 5th, finished 10th, started the main race in 10th, did not finish. I have gone for a 5 out of 10 for Oscar Piastri this week. In terms of pace, the worst weekend he's had in a very long time. A massive shame in the race. It looked like I think he could have been fighting for the sort of top 6, but unfortunately Esteban Ocon decided that he was going to keep his foot in and understeer into the side of Oscar's car, which, I mean, we at the time went, how on earth is he still going? 10 laps later, he wasn't going anymore, and the biggest flop was well and truly executed, so I apologise again, Oscar.
For Oscar, I have gone for a 6 out of 10, just because in the main race, he looked a little bit better before he was obviously having the problems and retired. The weird thing about Oscar Piastri in that race, that if you'd have told me that he had an older spec car for that weekend, I'd have believed you, because he just wasn't there with Lando. But as far as I know, they were driving exactly the same car, and Oscar was just really struggling all weekend. So I've gone for a 6 out of 10.
Lando Norris now started the sprint in 4th, finished 4th, started the main race in 2nd, finished 2nd.
Gone for a 9 out of 10 for Lando Norris. It's another very impressive weekend. Not quite perfect, which is why it's a 9 out of 10, but another P2. He is just flying at the moment. But one that does make you think, like, could there have been something there more? Because he had that lead, we were like, oh, Lando's got a chance if he gets the lead into turn 1 and Verstappen takes a while to get through the pack. And that's exactly what happened. But it still sadly didn't quite work out for him.
I've also gone for a 9 out of 10 for Lando. I think it was incredibly impressive. I probably would have given him a 10 had he beat Hamilton on the road, obviously, but that didn't happen. It was clear to see that the McLaren was struggling quite a lot, actually, with tyre wear, it seemed, because we were thinking, oh, maybe one stop, but he was struggling on his tyres after his second stop onto the hard tyres again. So it was a shame, obviously, for us that we thought maybe, just maybe, he was going to do the one stop, but after we saw how Charles Leclerc was, I think it's a good job that McLaren did not do a one-stop strategy, although obviously not the same car. Pierre Gasly started the sprint in 9th, finished 7th, and started the main race in 7th and finished 6th. I have gone for a 9 out of 10 for Pierre Gasly, because I think it was an incredibly impressive weekend it should have been for Alpine overall. He has these races occasionally where he just goes quietly about his way and just picks up loads of points. And we don't really see much of him but he finishes best of the rest or whatever that might be. Alpine, I don't think, should have been as quick as maybe they were this weekend, and I think Gasly outperformed the car especially by picking up that amount of points. So very impressed, Pierre Gasly, well done.
Indeed, I've gone for a 9 out of 10 as well. I almost wanted to give Gasly a 10 because it was so good, but I watched the race back. I watched the race back, and Ocon was ahead of him when he had his problem. But you can't deny that Gasly has absolutely maximised what he's got. A lot of the time with sprints, sometimes drivers can have an absolute terrible one and a really good one, but Gasly was really good in both. To get 7th and 6th from those two results is very impressive. So yeah, a really strong weekend from Gasly. Fair play.
Esteban Ocon now started the sprint in 13th, finished 11th, started the main race in 8th, and did not finish.
Gone for a 6 out of 10 for Esteban Ocon. The sprint has not been great. In the race, he had good pace, but then it's more on him, isn't it? The Piastri incident. Very surprising that Alpine did have this pace and were able to be right up there, and maybe Ocon should have just been a bit less happy with excitable and trying to go side by side into corners with people and just settled for the position and got a solid result. But alas, he didn't, and plummeted down the order and didn't finish.
I've gone a lot harsher. I've gone for a 4 out of 10 for Esteban Ocon, mainly because that incident was absolutely his fault, if we're going to say between himself and Oscar. And it is slightly, lap 1, it's a bit unlucky, but it is Esteban's fault. And it, in turn, caused himself and Oscar to DNF. So I can't give him any higher than a 4. I think, if anything, I'm being maybe a little bit generous because it ruined any chance of Esteban getting any points. And yeah, he was too eager. He was too eager to try and stay ahead of Oscar going into those S's, and unfortunately he paid the price for that. So yeah, 4 out of 10 from me. Lewis Hamilton started the sprint in 3rd, finished 2nd, started the main race in 3rd, and was disqualified. I've gone for a 9 out of 10 for Lewis Hamilton. I'm not going to give him any less just because he was disqualified. We're talking about the actual racing here, and wasn't his prerogative to have the floor the way it was or whatever. So yeah, it was an unbelievable drive from Lewis. Had he won, obviously it would have been a 10. It was close. Disappointed with the Mercedes strategy. But yeah, I think it was still a very good drive from Lewis. I would be interested to see how much slower Mercedes would have been had they actually been within the technical regulations.
I've gone for a 9 out of 10 as well for Hamilton. It was a brilliant drive. It's hard to downgrade him for his car that's been disqualified because it's happened to other teams as well, of course, and other drivers. Pretty much maximised everything he could. It's a shame that he was doing the chasing when I think he should have been the one that was ahead and Max chasing him, but it didn't happen.
George Russell started the sprint in 11th, finished 8th, and then started the main race in 5th, finished 5th.
This may seem harsh, but I've gone for a 5 out of 10. Some people may think it's harsh when he's finished the sprint in 8th and finished the race in 5th. But at the end of the day, I think he's a very lucky boy that his car wasn't checked, because surely if his car was checked, it would be exactly the same. So he's actually inherited 2 places and would have finished 7th on the road. He was absolutely nowhere near Hamilton this weekend. And I actually think that he's extremely lucky that Hamilton got disqualified, because the championship table before Hamilton got disqualified is very grim reading for George Russell, because Hamilton's there closing in on Checo for P2 and Russell's down in 8th. And I think it's completely gone under the radar of quite how bad George's had a season in compared to Lewis this season.
Yeah, I've also gone for a 5 out of 10. I don't think it's harsh at all. If anything, he's lucky to escape a 4 because I've just changed it. But it was a very poor weekend from George. He was nowhere. He got a penalty for blocking. And yeah, I think it's going under the radar as well. How George, I mean, he has like these odd moments where he's with Hamilton and he'll finish quite, level or on par with him. But then there are these moments where he's dipping quite substantially, and yeah, it was a weekend to forget, I think, for George, because you say finishing 7th on the road when Hamilton was 2 seconds off the win, it's not good enough. Carlos Sainz started the sprint in 6th, finished 6th, started the main race in 4th, finished 3rd. I've gone for a 7 out of 10 for Carlos. Some decent driving, utilising a good strategy from Ferrari, but Ferrari only decided to do that with 1 car. He made the most of the opportunities in front of him when there was cars going slower, like George Russell, whatever, making the move stick, and obviously then past Charles Leclerc at the end to wave goodbye to his teammate. but obviously inherits another podium after not being on the podium.
No, I just
it's
thought of
Carlos
that.
Sainz, isn't it? It's what an iconic duo for Carlos and not being on the podium when it's a podium. He wasn't on the level of Charles Leclerc this weekend, but the strategy obviously helped him out quite nicely. So yeah, 7.
I've gone for a 7 out of 10, and I think you've covered it all really. That he's got a good result and points in the bank, but he was fortunate that he got the good strategy and his car wasn't being checked.
Charles Leclerc started the sprint in 2nd, finished 3rd, started the main race in 1st, finished disqualified.
Ouch. I've gone for an 8 out of 10 for Charles Leclerc because I think he has been shafted this weekend and I think he had great pace. If you look at his results in the qualifying sessions, 2nd in the sprint, 1st in the main race, the guy is just able, in 1 lap pace, to do incredible things with the Formula 1 car. It's not a bad thing that he can do that. And it is clear to everyone that he doesn't have the tyres and the car in the race.
I've gone for an 8 out of 10 as well for Charles Leclerc. I think he thrust that Ferrari into a place it didn't belong in qualifying, as we have got to know with him. Did a good job in the sprint to finish 3rd, and then, yeah, the 1 stop. Interested to see why Charles went along with that, because at the end of the day, he is a driver and he can call for a 2-stop if necessary, but he sort of committed to it. No one else, I don't think anybody else, did a 1-stop. No, literally no other car.
No, because he stayed out the longest, and then they just kind of, by the end, were just like, well, we've made our bed now, let's lie in it, rather than...
Yeah, not one other car did a 1-stop. Sergio Perez started the sprint in 7th, finished 5th. Started the main race in 9th, finished 4th. On paper, that looks all right. I'm giving him a 6 out of 10. It's okay, but your teammates winning both the sprint and the race. I feel like we're just regurgitating the same thing over and over and over. His qualifying is just not good enough. And this is where we see, like, Max isn't getting pole by a massive margin or whatever. Obviously, he made that mistake on Friday, but it's very close in qualifying. And when Sergio has that deficit to his teammate in qualifying, he's going to fall back quite significantly, and that's what we're seeing. It just gives him too much work to do, and then he's stuck in the traffic for quite a long time. And I see some people going, "Oh, Matt, you know, what is with all this Checo slander? And oh, you just want him out the Red Bull seat." And I'm like, do you see what his teammate is doing this year? He's in one of the most dominant cars of all time. Of course I'm going to give him average grades because he's not even on the podium.
I've gone for a 7 out of 10, which I think is generous, but it's only because I have basically been saying for the last 5 races that all he needs to do is just have a normal race and finish 5th or 4th or whatever. But still, it is painful because at the end of the day, Max starts 6th because of a mistake, and you think, Checo, this is your time to actually capitalise, and he's qualifying down with the Alpines and battling them.
Max Verstappen started the sprint in 1st, finished 1st, started the main race in 6th, finished 1st.
It's a 10 out of 10. Despite the small error, of all the times that you want to make an error, it's in qualifying and he rectified it in the race. Again, it's the sign of Verstappen's brilliance this year that race threw a lot against him. Look where Perez was, but you know, he had brake problems. He had the instant where there were fast cars up ahead. He had to do different things. For the first time, really, it didn't look like he was miles clear other than the anomaly of Singapore. And the guy still ends up winning in the sprint and the main race. What is there more to say? Just superb again.
Absolutely. I've gone for a 10 out of 10 as well for Max. Of course, he made that small mistake on Friday, which was millimetres, obviously, off the track. But he drove around those brake problems. He beat, technically, an illegal car. What's most impressive about Max, and I did say this in the Twitch watch along as well, where I was like, I'll be interested to see if Max has the same level of patience when he knows that the car isn't good enough to get straight to first and doesn't really matter how long it takes. Because sometimes, I guess, champions are made where you can settle for a 2nd or 3rd when you know that the win isn't on. So I am going to be interested to see as the years goes on if Max genuinely has instilled this patient approach. But as of right now, and this is the only thing we can judge, he was patient. He managed his moves brilliantly and then ended up winning the race. So yeah, 10 out of 10 for Max Verstappen. Finally, who is our P1? Well, the only P1 10 out of 10 is Max Verstappen. So congratulations to Max Verstappen. There's no other 10 out of 10 performances for either of us, is there?
Indeed, yeah. There were some good drives, Gasly and Norris and Hamilton, but they all got 9 out of 10s, and Max got a 10. So it's got to be Max again.
Well done, Max. It's Max again. That's what we've heard a lot this season. But that is it. Thank you, everybody, for watching and listening to this F1 driver rating video for the United States Grand Prix. We'll be back very soon. We are back. It's race week now that we're recording this, because we're going to Mexico, of course, this weekend. Well, we're not, but Formula One is, and we'll be live on Twitch.
We're going to Mexico.
Yeah, sorry, Tommy, I haven't told you about that. Sorry, mate. Of course, we will be live as normal for Mexico City Grand Prix for the whole weekend. So look forward to that, and we'll see you very soon. Bye.
Bye.